Good Monday to you from Baja. So last week's Monday post was so popular, we're going to turn this into a series. This is the second of 5, focused on lessons that I've learned over past downturns. Today's focus will be, again, for organizational leaders and entrepreneurs, but specifically around employees and culture. So number one lesson is, here's the question I think you could ask in good times or bad times to your direct reports. How can I support you to do the best work of your life here at Airbnb, Joie de Vivre, Modern Elder Academy? The most important thing around that is it helps your employees know you want them to be successful. You're there to support them. You're a servant leader. But beyond that, it also helps put them in a position to ask the big question, how can they do the best work of their life, especially at this time? And it gives them the agency and responsibility to come up with that for you. So consider that question. How can I support you to do the best work of your life here at whatever company you're in? The second question is an equation, one of my favorite emotional equations, which is anxiety equals uncertainty times powerlessness. Uncertainty and powerlessness are the two primary ingredients for anxiety. So if you can actually take one of them down, it actually has a huge effect on the other one in terms of the combustible nature of a time sign versus a plus sign. So what does that mean? Uncertainty, radical transparency, being very open about where things are going is really essential. And secondly, powerlessness speaks to the idea of the impact they can have. So help people to see the impact that they can have. Help your customers tell your employees what kind of impact they're having. We used to actually have our guests come in and talk with our employees and tell them why they love them so much. The third rule here, or third lesson, is results and relationships are both important in a downturn. What tends to happen in a downturn is there's a lot of finger pointing and people get very focused on results and don't realize the toxic effect that someone who doesn't have a relationship focus can have on an organization. Here's a little guide here for you. Basically shows 16 boxes. This is in my book, The Rebel Rules, and just shows that you can actually rate your managers based upon a 1 to 4 schedule for results, based upon revenues, net income, market share, and a 1 to 4 on relationships based upon employee satisfaction surveys, 360-degree feedback from people who work with them, and exit interviews. We would only give people a growth in the company if they were in that first quadrant, numbers 1 through 4, which means that they're either a 1 or 2 for results or a 1 or 2 for relationships. Thirdly, corporate culture needs to be democratized in a downturn. The more you democratize it, the more you actually build some entrepreneurial spirit at your property level. So find someone in the organization, not a manager, someone who's a line level leader, who's clearly a cultural mascot in the organization. Build a team of cultural ambassadors in your various departments or companies, and then train them about how they can actually keep the culture alive. How can they build a recognition culture in their particular property? And give them that training. It was a huge benefit at Joie de Vivre when we went through 2 downturns. So cultural ambassadors, you can read a little bit more about that in my book, Peak. And then finally, how do you assure that your company doesn't become a bunch of zombies? Not zombies, but zombies. So what does that mean? It just means, in the old days, you would learn things walking to the water cooler and having a conversation with someone just off the cuff. That doesn't happen in the form of Zoom. So what I highly recommend in terms of using Zoom or other video platforms that you have to use right now with social distancing is make sure you have offline conversations one-on-one with people who are on the call. Do notice what people's facial expressions are. Do notice if people are actually not engaged and they're in fact on their iPhone at the same time that you're on the call. Make a rule that in fact people can't go on their iPhone or their smartphone while the call's going on. But most importantly, do follow-ups, especially when there's a conflict that came up in the meeting. Because sometimes the conversation that needs to happen after the meeting, after the Zoom call, is much more important than what happened on the Zoom call. So those are my 5 lessons for creating great culture with your employees in a downturn. I'll be back with you next Monday, focusing on the customer.